of you may have never heard the name, but you will probably, as you get into your faith and you start studying about church history, you're going to hear certain names. Charles Spurgeon, Charles Finney, Phineas Dake. I mean, a lot of Finneys here. Well, Charles Finney is a name that's known to most anybody who's ever studied the mighty movements of God in this country. He was a former lawyer turned preacher by the call of God. Charles Finney was one of the key figures during the Second Great Awakening in the 19th century here in America, which touched virtually every aspect of his life in this country. Finney is sometimes called America's most foremost revivalist. And there is no doubt that God had his hand on him. In the 7 years in which Finney was an evangelist, there were an estimated 500,000 people come to Christ in 7 years. His ministry in Rochester, New York, from 1830 to 1831 has been called the greatest year of spiritual awakening in American history. Someone did a follow-up study of those reported converted under Finney's preaching and found that years later, 80% of those who made professions of faith gave evidence of a true life that was changed. Did you get that? 80% of 500,000 provided evidence. And what is more, there were immediate effects that were felt in social structures and in the cities and in the townships. And by every standard we know, if you look and you start studying about the history of the church and the move of God in this country or in the world, you'll find this was one of the greatest. It wasn't the first. One of the greatest. We'll find some of the greatest in the Bible, in the pages of the Holy Scripture. We'll find some of the greatest. Acts chapter 1. They were gathered together in what? In one place. And they were there together in one place. Shortly after that, in one day, 3,000 people, because of the preaching of a man who was changed by God, the preaching of Peter, 3,000 came to faith, came to acknowledge, came to accept the work of Jesus in their lives. In one day. If you ask Charles Finney, he would point out one man who partnered with him in this crusade. His name was Daniel Nash. He joined him for the purpose of prayer. Now, Daniel Nash, as I found out, was rarely ever seen to stand with Charles Finney. But where he was found would be behind closed doors with a group of trusted men, and where Charles Finney would be preparing to preach. That group of men would be there, and they would be laying on the floor, they would be prostrate before God, they would be praying, and they would be asking God to